Hello guys, welcome to Network. This is part 12 and the final part of the Workstation build. In this video, I'm going to be installing the drivers. So I put all the drivers and stuff like that onto a flash drive. I plugged it into a USB 2.0 port because we do not have the drivers installed yet for 3.0. The first thing I'm going to install is going to be the drivers for a little Wi-Fi adapter. And the reason why I am installing the drivers for a little Wi-Fi adapter is just so I have networking where I was at. You want to have networking when you go to do updates and stuff like that. So you can see I had to plug the little Wi-Fi adapter card in. And I just want to install the driver only. This was before I had my little workbench downstairs where I had Ethernet available. So I had to use, had to get on network via Wi-Fi. So I had a little USB Wi-Fi card, and that's how I went about it. You'll notice down in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see that the Wi-Fi symbol will start appearing. I believe I'll have to replug the adapter in and out for it to reinitialize and load the driver. So we'll go ahead and pop in the Wi-Fi password and connect to the network. We'll select this as a home network indeed. So the first thing I want to do is I want to update the time. Since this is brand new motherboard and everything, I just want to make sure that the time is accurate before we start installing a bunch of drivers and talking to the internet and everything. You want to make sure your time is accurate. So I prefer to use Apple's time servers. So that's what I did there. So now we ensure that the time is correct. So I'm going to copy my driver folder over to the local SSD rather than just install off of the flash drive. It's a better practice. It will go a little bit slower because, like I said, this is going at USB 2.0 there. So I'm going to open up Device Manager, and we're going to see all the various devices that are complaining that they're missing a driver. But as we install drivers, you're going to start seeing a lot of those go away. These are pretty normal transfer speeds for a cheap USB 2.0 flash drive. To be expected. Just be patient, right? Do note the date. This was April of 2019 when I did this build. Okay, so you see I practically went and got all the drivers directly off MSI's website for my workstation board. So the first thing you want to install is you're going to want to install the chipset driver. So this is an X99 platform, so we're going to install the Intel X99 chipset driver. This is the first thing I recommend you install on the computer. And I do apologize for the camera going in and out of focus like that. I think this was This was back when I first got my camera, and I believe I had it on autofocus, so it would focus hunt there from time to time. Now I basically run my camera in manual, so it stays locked into a specific focus. So it does want you to restart after you install the chipset driver. So we'll go ahead and, I clicked restart later, but go ahead and delete the folder so we know we knocked that one out. Next thing I'm going to install, looks like it's going to install the USB 3.0 driver. Now on Windows 10, Windows 10 has built-in USB 3.0 drivers, but I always recommend installing the actual controller's driver for better performance. And that was the beauty of this platform, of this motherboard, the MSI X99A workstation board, is it had native Windows 7 drivers for everything. It was pretty much flawless installing them all. I didn't have any issues with it at all. You get a newer board, and you want to run Windows 7 on a newer motherboard, a newer platform, newer chipset. Good luck, you're not going to have drivers for your USB 3.0, and you're not going to have drivers for the chipset, which is going to suck. So we're going to install the drivers for the other USB 3.0 controller. A lot of these high-end motherboards will have multiple controllers. The as media is for like the 10 gig USB ports. And notice how I am deleting these folders as I knock them out, so I know what I've done. Now I'm installing the drivers for the onboard Intel Ethernet NICs. Actually, I didn't really need to do this. I could have disabled built-in networking in the BIOS and not even install these drivers, because I'm not even using the Ethernet ports on my motherboard. I'm using a 10 gig SFP card, so looking back, I could have avoided installing these drivers and even enabling the NIC. So there's the drivers for the Intel NICs installed. Go ahead and exit on that. You think they would automatically close that out, but some things don't do that. Next, we're going to install the Intel management engine. It's really hard to kind of explain what this does. So I'm not going to really dive into it, but you'll definitely want to install the drivers for it. Now we're going to install the drivers for Intel Rapid Storage Technology. And normally you'll install this if you're doing like some type of RAID or stuff like that. The reason I install it is because it gives you a bit better SATA drivers. So if you're running a SATA SSD like I'm using the 860 Pro, I actually find I get better SSD performance by having Intel Rapid Storage Technology, RST, installed. So I do recommend you install RST if you are using SATA SSDs. So I was going to install the Intel Turbo Boost, but you don't actually need to have that installed. Your CPU will still turbo and everything, so it's kind of unnecessary. So now I'm installing the Mellanox Connect X2 drivers. This is for my 10 gig SFP card, which I use to connect, over 10 gig fiber on my LAN network. Since this network card was a little bit older, it did have proper Windows 7 drivers. It does have drivers for Windows 10, but I've found them to be kind of flaky. A lot of people recommend using this card on Windows 10, but I find it to be kind of iffy. So, but on Windows 7, all the Windows 7 machines I put this card in with this specific driver that I have here, the 5.10 version, it's been rock solid, and it does deliver the 10 gig performance. Of course, your CPU horsepower is going to matter in that, and your disk I/O, stuff like that. Like on an older i5, like a 4th gen i5 machine I have, it runs like around 6 to 7 gigabit. But of course, on my computer and everything on Windows 7, it runs about 9.5, 9.8, give or take, gigabit, which that's normal with overhead compensated in there. Now, I believe this will attempt to also update the firmware of the card as it installs the driver. Sometimes it will fail, that's normal, but I believe it did work in my case and updated the firmware. So now if I go into the network settings, you'll see that the Mellanox ConnectX 2 card does actually pop up in there now. It shows a red X because obviously you don't have a medium connected to it yet. It's disconnected, but see it pops right in there. It shows we are linked at ×8, which is good. These cards are very picky. They like to have ×8. So now this is very important. Since I do have an NVMe SSD, the 970 Pro installed, you will have to install the Samsung NVMe driver. Now, Windows 10 does have a built-in NVMe driver. However, for best performance, you want to install the Samsung NVMe driver if you have a Samsung NVMe SSD. So now we're going to install the driver for the graphics card. This is for the NVIDIA RTX 2060. So we're going to install the graphics driver in GeForce Experience. I do recommend you also include GeForce Experience. It says installing graphics driver. It is normal for your screen to go in and out, and for the resolution to resize and everything. You'll notice right now you have that default low resolution. It makes the icons really big on the screen. You're going to notice once the graphics card driver is installed, you're going to see that the resolution will change to the native 1080p of this TV, because this is a TV that's connected to right now. The HD audio driver is because your graphics card actually does also act as a sound card, because it does send out digital audio over HDMI and DisplayPort to your monitors. So if your monitors have built-in speakers, they can effectively play sound. That's what that's for. So install CUDA, which that's good to have for, video rendering, stuff like that. Install any necessary dependencies, such as Visual C, and different frameworks, stuff like that. Pretty normal. I will note, though, NVIDIA does support, Windows 7. They give you Windows 7 drivers for the 20 series and even the 3000 series GPUs, which is great. However, they will not provide the driver for the, I believe it's the USB-C port on these graphics cards. So if you're using like VR or something like that requires that on the GPU, they don't provide that for Windows 7. They just provide the graphics driver. So if you go in Device Manager, you will see like a USB device that's unknown. It's from the graphics card, and it's completely normal. So now we're going to install Samsung Magician. This is a good tool to have, or utility to have, when you have Samsung SSDs in your system. I highly recommend you install it. So this isn't a driver, it's just more of a utility. It will also do stuff like update the firmware on the SSDs. So there's all the drivers installed. So I'm going to install some just other utilities. So right now I'm installing MSI Afterburner. It's a good way to monitor and control things on your GPU, such as the fan speed. You can do a little bit of overclocking on the GPU, stuff like that. It's just a good utility to have on your system. Now I'm going to install the MSI Command Center. This is a really good utility to have if you have an MSI motherboard. This will allow you to fully control all the fans in your system, all the different system fans, monitor the temperatures, RPM on the system fan. It's a really good utility for thermals and controlling your fans and stuff like that. I just go to the recycle bin, empty all these out, unpin the default things that are pinned at the bottom. We're going to go ahead and issue a shutdown, and I'm going to manually turn the system back on. As you see, yes, I am running Windows 7 Ultimate, and it does have a legit product key. This is a legit Workstation professional build done right. Yes, I could have ran a Windows loader, pirated it, whatever, but I'm not about that anymore. I do stuff professional, and you see the motherboard booting up. You can probably see the BIOS code down at the bottom there, the little red light indicators. Yeah, there's a close-up. Like I said, this motherboard in particular, this MSI X99A workstation board, it does take a lot of posts because there's just so much going on with it. So you see we posted, and we're going to reboot into the operating system with all the new drivers installed. Let's see how fast it boots after we install all those drivers. Most of the time, it can't even load the flag. It boots in faster than that. So I did set password on there, and we'll go ahead and there we go. You will see how the icons on the taskbar and everything got a lot smaller. That's because our resolution did bump up to the native 1080p. So the computer is bugging us to restart again. That's probably because some drivers were still installing and they were initialized, and they're like, hey, we need you to restart the computer again. This is pretty normal when you first install drivers and stuff, when you first set up a machine. MSI workstations. So we're back after a restart. I'm going to turn on Arrow. To do that, the best way is just to click on a regular theme. Now that we do have the GPU driver installed, we can turn Arrow on. Just the color scheme, mess around with it. Just doing some basic stuff here. So now if I go into Device Manager, you're going to notice a lot of those unknown devices have went away. So notice there's a PCI device. And if there's a device on here, a hardware device that says it's missing a driver, the best way to figure out what it is you go into Details, Hardware IDs, and you copy that hardware ID value, and you basically search it on Google, and you can identify what device that is. Now you see there is a USB device, and I'm like, what? I have both the USB controller drivers installed, and they install just fine. What is this? This is that USB-C or whatever that is on some GPUs for like VR and stuff. And I just told you before when I was installing the GPU driver, NVIDIA doesn't provide this for Windows 7. So that will show unknown. What I do is I just go ahead and just disable that in there because, just so it's not like popping up, hey, this is unknown. I'm checking all the various devices, make sure, you know, the NICs show up, the GPU shows up, all the different drivers we installed are showing up properly. So like I said, I copied the hardware IDs and I did some research afterwards to figure out what they were. So now I'm going into Disk Manager. So another way to get into Disk Manager is you can obviously on Windows 7 right click Computer, go to Manage, and that's another way to access the disk management. So I put a Samsung 970 Pro NVMe drive in the system, and like I said earlier in this video, we installed the driver for it, and you'll notice it'll pop right up now. The drive will not pop up in Disk Manager until you have the Samsung NVMe driver installed on Windows 7. So once you have the driver installed, in order to use the SSD, you have to partition it. So to do this, we go into Disk Manager and we're going to right click and create a new NTFS volume. Now you could change the driver over to whatever you want. I set it to letter N, which is short for NVMe. And then for the volume label, the name, I just put 970 so I know, hey, this is my 970 drive. I'm sorry it is a bit out of focus. I think I was also holding on to the camera as well. I don't think I had a tripod when I made this video. So now you'll notice the 970 pops up, and when you go into File Explorer, you'll now see we now have access and can use our NVMe drive. And then I was very shocked because I'm like, wow, what is eating up all that hard drive space on my local disk? You know what that's from? The page file. I have 128 gig of RAM in this machine, so the page file is likewise about 128 gig in size. So you're going to notice on a fresh install, you're like, wow, what is eating up all my space? It's because I have a shit ton of RAM and a big ass page file. So I go in later and I disable the page file because I have so much RAM I don't even need a page file. So I do that later on. It's not going to be in this video. But anyway, guys, that wraps it up as far as installing the drivers and as far as what I filmed of doing the Workstation build. I hope you guys enjoyed this series, and I'll see you guys next time.